I keep you on payroll, right?
Good afternoon, everyone. We're here at Writers of the Future in Los Angeles, California, like we are every year. I hope everyone has been enjoying these interviews. I know some of you, if you're lucky, get to catch them live because we plug into the live audience when we're doing the interviews. I know yesterday we had a good audience listening to Orson, about 88,000 people, which is a small, regular audience, but still, it's a nice and special event that you got. Now, I have two very special gentlemen sitting in front of me here. And if you're a regular of DragonCon, you may know who they are, but we'll talk about that in a few minutes. What we really want to do, we're going to start with you. I want you to just tell them who you are, and then we'll talk about Writers of the Future, and we'll go in and talk about Writers of the Future, and we'll flop back to DragonCon.
Hey, I'm Pat Henry. I'm the president of DragonCon and have been to all of them. So
there
you go.
I'm Bill Fawcett. I came out of publishing and writing. I'm an author and book packager and game designer and a volunteer at DragonCon. And I've been to most of them. I just can't remember them anymore.
Watch it.
Yeah, well, let's talk about the memory stuff because mine is not that great. So, Pat, what you doing out here for Writers of the Future? I know you.
Well, this year it's their 40th anniversary, and I'm here to present an award, a Dragon Award, which is a People's Choice Award we do.
Is that the one I seen over at Author Services?
Yeah, kind of nice looking.
Oh, yeah, it's bad. Look, I got some pictures of it. Actually, a very good looking award. Y'all will see that award on the site sometime in the next couple of weeks.
Looks like a flame.
It does. It's a really nice award, guys. And so you came out and you're going to give it to them?
Yeah, we try to do things first class, just like they do out here at Author Services and Writers of the Future.
First class.
Yeah, and John and Emily are first class in their whole operation. We love it out here. I get to meet a number of people at DragonCon. I'm mostly working, so I don't get a lot of time to visit with the guests, the writers. I'm absolutely a sci-fi fantasy reader, and it gives me an opportunity out here. I can talk to Larry Niven. I've talked to Dr. Purnell out here. I've talked to a lot of different people that we've had at the show, but I just never get a chance at the show. So it's wonderful. And he's a peach. He's always runs good show.
Larry's date every year.
Huh?
I'm Larry
Niven.
Oh, Larry Niven.
Well,
oh my God!
I scared the daylight. He kept running from me. But after that, somebody put him on the arm and said, "Take care, Larry."
Yeah,
Okay.
And Larry needs it.
Yes, but it's funny. He was very quiet, but once he starts talking, he's like me. He can talk. He's got some stories.
He knows so much.
Oh yeah, he's fun.
Any favorites out here? I don't get you into. I don't get you into.
Yeah. My favorites. There are a lot of them. Nettie is.
Nettie's good.
Yeah, she's. I mean, I'm a huge fan of her. I've got her 2 new books, but I'm not going to read them until the 3rd one comes out because otherwise I'll be crazy.
Yeah.
So yes, but I did that with. I've done that with some other stuff, but I think I've read at least 8 of hers, and I've read what she's written in the Writers of the Future booklets. So yeah, I'm a huge fan. Orson Scott Card, huge fan. Haven't met him yet. Came out here, and my son-in-law is a big fan, and I offered him the opportunity to come out here with me and meet him, but his wife wouldn't let him get. So
we have hundreds of authors literally at DragonCon, and we love them all, and they're always also supportive. I mean, they come and help make the con. We've had some that we love the books, many of them. And also we've got some who are very supportive of like John Scalzi has always been really helpful, not only because he supports us, but because he gives us feedback and tells us to do. And we always like to listen to our guests on what's happening.
And we've got a lot of illustrators out here too. So everybody, and Eric Flint, who won the contest before, he was a regular at DragonCon. So we've had a number of the winners, and we actually do an arrangement for the Writers of the Future and Author Services to do some panel work at DragonCon, and we appreciate that. Anything that strengthens the industry, and this is the place.
This is the place. Chris, no, this is we're talking with Pat from DragonCon, but he's here speaking for Writers of the Future. If y'all don't know about Writers of the Future, just go to writersofthefuture.com and check it out yourself at galaxypress.com. We're not going to get into what you can do, but if you want to submit a book or illustration, you go to writersofthefuture.com and do it that way. Now, Pat's here helping him out and giving him some prep. And I noticed that John goes to DragonCon every year with y'all. He always speaks highly of you, by the way. And we've talked about you on many occasions. Because a couple times, I need to hook up with him, but it's always something else, running in circles, which I'm sure you understand. It's but yeah, this is the guy who really created DragonCon. he's the one that you need to thank for having Dragon Con every year. If you haven't been, I would tell you to get your butts out there. But the 2 times I've been, I had nothing but fun. Even though I probably lost 20 pounds while I was there, which was a good thing for me, by the way. But it was just fun. It was my problem with this was, so I'm sitting there, I'm talking to John when he's like, "Where do I want to go?" And I'm saying, "Don't I go over here?" So then I'm looking, what's closest to me?
Well, we say you lost 20 pounds.
Yeah.
So are you saying Dragon Con's good for your heart? Can I rip that?
We'll put that on a banner somewhere.
Yes, because I mean, I lost a good 20 pounds easy. For me, it was just, I don't know, it's like an immersive experience almost.
Well, Dragon Con's a big tent, and we want to welcome all of fandom, from cosplay to robotics to full contact combat to all the various literary, comic, and of course, an enormous art show that's well known. And the idea is for everyone to come. We're a fan-run convention. We're the people's convention, really. If it wasn't for our amazing volunteers, and I'm talking hundreds and hundreds of volunteers,
2,500.
2,500 this year signed up. If it wasn't for that, it wouldn't be Dragon Con. So we just love.
And the fans. It's the greatest non-judgmental. Let's have a good time. We're here to hang out, have a great time.
And one of the things that amazes me about this is I didn't see any discontented people. If there were, they weren't anywhere I could see them. Maybe hidden in an Auburn background somewhere, but I mean, everybody always had a smile on their face. Everybody was just, of course, you would see people sometimes like leaning against the wall and wore out. I'm
afraid we do resemble that, particularly late at night or early morning.
I mean, there's just so much going on. It's so much. People, what I'd recommend if you go to Dragon Con is go through the thing first and see what you want to see. Get all of your favorites out of the way, and then go through and see the stuff you missed. You're not going to get it all, but you can try.
Actually, on Thursday we do a Dragon Con 101 where we have classes that would walk through the convention space and kind of give them an idea of what's where. We have 5 host hotels.
We have newbie orientation, and you need it.
We have 5 host hotels, plus we have the mart with the comics and the vendors and whatnot. So plus gaming is over another building. So it's a good thing to do.
It is. They're in the center of Atlanta. They're how far are y'all from the airport? You're a little ways from the airport, right?
Not really. The airport's
about 12 miles.
Yeah, I think it was that far. So yeah, you can if you book now if you want to try to get close to them. If not, there's lots of hotels downtown in Atlanta that you said. There's lots of Ubers. I mean,
and the train.
Yeah.
We have MARTA, which is we have a train stop not a block from Dragon Con Central.
Do all that. I was lazy sometimes, so I Ubered around. Actually was interviewing the Uber drivers. So would you like to talk about your experience down here? Now I've been to over the year. I've been to a lot of different cons because I do a lot of lectures myself. But I found this to just stand out. Now I've never been to San Diego, but I've been to Tampa. You can probably fit all of those indoors. And I'm not trying to cut on anybody because they're all good. It just really seems like you really they could all be condensed under y'all's easily.
Well, in the beginning, there were when we first started talking about Dragon Con, there were Doctor Who conventions, there were gaming conventions, there were Star Trek conventions, there were comic book conventions, and I read comics, I played games, I love Doctor Who, and and why at 8 or 9 o'clock when the masquerade's over or whatever, go to bed and then get up the next day. I mean, when we could just turn the lights on all night long, we could have some rock and roll, we could keep things going, and we could bring everything together.
It's a fabulous experience.
And people seem to appreciate it.
And because of the growth in our spirit of family and everyone being supportive, it's allowed us to do a lot more things together than any normal individual smaller con. There's 5 balls. We have a big charity event. We are the largest blood donation in the Southeast, second, I think, largest in the country. And it's all because the fans are supporting it and they're working at it and they're providing it. There are 3,000 events at Dragon Con.
And while we got since you're talking about the different stuff, the charity angle of Dragon Con, we donated $250,000 to childhood cancer this year.
That's serious.
It is. But we believe, we do a match, and we do a match every year, and this year it's going to be the Arthritis Foundation. But we do somebody who's got something local in Atlanta, and yet big enough that we won't break it by putting that much money in it. So we're, and it's not just us; it's our people.
Yeah.
It's the way we feel.
It's generous, and there's a feeling of family. You're welcome, and it's non-judgmental. I mean, even the Atlanta Police Department fight to work at it because it's a relax-a-con on the largest scale possible.
And we have science, and we've had astronauts and whatnot.
And the War College
guys from the paranormal shows, and it's something for everybody. And we all dress up funny.
I know that somebody just had asked that. I was going to tell them. I said, yeah. Because when I was there, everybody was dressed up. Matter of fact, I had my lightsaber because lightsaber. Anyway, we're not going to get into that.
Oh, did I say funny? I meant we all dress up
uniquely.
Uniquely.
Well, I've seen every edge of costumes there, from Star Wars to Star Trek to all kinds of stuff in between.
3 masquerade contests, 2 whole tracks of events, and Saturday night is amazing. I mean, you have hundreds of people in Hollywood level costumes or better who are attending, walking around, you have photo opportunities, and they're welcome. And it's just exciting. The atmosphere is wonderful.
And I get stuck between it was like a group of Doctor Who fans. It was like from Doctor 1 to Doctor 13. I was like, really? Doctor 12, actually. I was like, they were pretty good too. I was kind of like, wow, look at
the quality is amazing.
Looking for their TARDIS.
Yes,
yeah,
it was unbelievable. It was actually, it's a great experience.
Right. We see Deadpool. Deadpool could be carrying a lightsaber. Deadpool could be have a stormtrooper helmet and a lightsaber.
Yeah, we get a lot of crossovers.
We call those mashups. And
it's ladies, if you can get there, I would go. It's just when is it this year?
Always Labor Day weekend. We start the Thursday before Labor Day weekend, and we go even on Monday. So
end of August, start of September.
Yeah, so that's what I thought it was, because there's an event that tells me it's just such a, people get out, go enjoy it. And it's Atlanta Airport. I mean, come on, you can't fly to a cheaper airport than Atlanta, and it's easy airport to fly in and out of. So it's right there.
Jump on the MARTA. You're 15 minutes from under the Marriott Hotel, under the Hyatt Hotel, right there. You don't need to. Real easy to get in.
Denise, I'd book now. Their hotel rooms go fast.
Well, the hotel rooms are challenging, but the memberships, we do cut them off at a certain point. We went over 85,000 back in 2019 pre-COVID, and we felt like, we'd like a little more room. So after that, we've since COVID, we didn't have a show in 2020, but when we came back half strength, and then last year we limited it to 75,000, and we're kind of comfortable around that number. We want people to have room to have fun. This isn't all about making money. This is about Atlanta. This is about having fun. We bring like $60 to $70 million in the city of Atlanta. That's good. We're very happy with that. We're very happy.
We're proud of our unofficial nickname, Mardi Gras for Nerds.
You know what it is. I know I went, 2 years. I'll be there this year again. I always have a good time. My thing is, I was walking around doing interviews the first year I went, and I was just talking to people, and this is weird for me because I attend a lot of different things. There's always somebody gonna bitch about something. No, I have people laying out a while ago about to pass it. They still ain't bitching. They're like, oh, I gotta get some water because y'all got water out, which is very nice, by the way, out in different places. And I gotta get some water. I'm catching my breath, and I'm going. And sure enough, 2 sips of water, they were gone. I was like, damn. They're like, you want to follow me, man? I said, oh no, I'm not older than you are. But it's and I had a good time. I had a good time. I hung out and over by the place where John over there. So I'm gonna hang out with him for a while. And we actually did some live interviews out of John's booth over there with some of the people just passing by. Just say, what are y'all doing? Come on in and have it out. We're talking about John Goodwin from Writers of the Future. They have a booth. They actually have a big ass booth there, and
it's rather large.
It is rather large. It's way bigger than most of them.
I think it's going to be fancier this year too with the 40th anniversary.
Yes.
They're going to have a bunch of the winners and a bunch of the judges signing there.
Yes.
So it's going to be fun to stop by.
And they do panels there for us, and they'll do some artist panels and whatnot in our art show.
And I noticed that I see some of their authors, not so much just their authors there. I don't want to say their authors; they're just authors in general. But they're either judges or winners that have gotten a spot over there somewhere. And because I was walking through one of the sections, and I started noticing people I knew. Oh, well, this is really nice. I'm getting to know some of your horses. It's getting a little weird, but it's a great event. Because so I know, Kim, you can't come to Writers of the Future unless you're invited. Pat's an important person, so he gets to come.
And I'm just here because my wife's the coordinating judge.
Yeah, and his wife is Jody Lai, who's actually fabulous. You'll see an interview with her coming up as well soon. I'm just here because I'm a pain in the ass. So I'm here for press and other things. But so if you win, illustrator art, yeah, you can come. Or if you're somebody that has something that would serve Writers Futures, you can come. But you got to be invited. That's all I can tell you. You got to win or be invited.
If you win, they bring you here on their dime.
Yep.
So this has been going on for 40 years.
If you want to be here, submit a story. It's free. You can submit one a quarter. You can resubmit if you rewrite it better. Submit a story. If you're a finalist, you're here and it's on us.
They search the world for talent. They bring the talent in. They help train them. They help publish them. And then at the end, the industry's much better off for it. And that's why I'm here to present an award to them for 40 years. They've been doing this, and it's all on their dime.
It's all on their dime. Christopher, no, they take good care of me one here. They fly me out here. Y'all can't see the suite, but I did post a suite online so y'all can see it. I always tell them I need a decent sized suite to do interviews, and they always make sure I got what I need. And they feed us. And I didn't even know they fed us. I walked around with the thing last year.
Oh, jeez.
It's one of the things, guys and girls. But that's the only way you get in. Now, DragonCon's different. Just buy your ticket, get your hotel room, and get there before this sold.
We actually call them memberships, not tickets, because
correct.
There you go.
I'll remember that in the future. Memberships.
Because you're in the family.
Well, I still got mine from the 2 years when they're hanging up. And matter of fact, they're hanging away. You can see them on my camera. I'm doing live shows.
Oh, love it.
Yeah, the room keys are collectibles. Every year it has original art for all the hotels.
Because one guy said, "Is that for this?" Yes, and that's last year. Would you give it to us? Why do you want it? To collectibles. I said, well, to collectibles, let's stand right where we are. I said, don't even worry about it. I'm really weird about keeping stuff like that. Maybe we should dress y'all up like Doctor Who. I can see y'all two different Doctor Who's.
Yeah, I have to deal with the hotels now and then. They get a little nervous when I start showing up in a costume.
Oh, yeah, I can imagine.
The only time I dress up in a costume is for the parade, and that's to take my grandkids in the parade. And several years ago, we were going to the city of Atlanta was giving us a hard time about our parade. I actually got the permit Saturday morning of the parade. And I said, that's it. We're done. We're going to do parade next year. That's going to be the last DragonCon parade. My daughters, who both run the show mostly now, they said, oh, Dad, you can't do that. The parade's too popular. I said, I can do that. I'm tired of the city of Atlanta jerking us around. Well, the city of Atlanta year, we got the permit 2 months ahead. They were sealing trash cans. They brought garbage trucks in to protect the route. All of this without me having to do a thing. And all of my partners said, Pat, you got to ride in the parade. You started it. It's your deal. Absolutely. And I always started it and ended it, but never rode. And the grandkids, I said, all right, grandkids, who's going? So all three of my granddaughters went. We dressed like nerds. I had the Band-Aid on the thing. I had the pocket protector. I had the rainbow suspenders. We rode in the parade, and I saw people, grown-ups, letting kids through to sit on the curb. I mean, the kids are going to get a better seat. They were such generosity, and I saw that, and we can't quit this.
We get 100,000 people from the community who comes in and watches, and it's broadcast on the local television as well. And the parade is not a big fancy Rose Bowl. It's the people from the convention in costumes and a few things they put together, and then our guests riding in a convertible, our fearless leader in a convertible, and this kind of thing. And it's just a fun time again. And then many of them come in and visit the show that day or not. And you bring your kids, and the merchants love it.
But the other thing is at the end of the parade, my children, they said, all right, Dad, now you're in a fix. She said that was the last DragonCon parade. I said, I'm not in a fix. Next year's last DragonCon parade, volume 2. We're fine. We're DragonCon. We can do anything.
Our hotels, our parades retire like quarterbacks.
Well, when I'm down the shop Friday, since we have so much so we got so much new TV venues that we carry, I'll probably come down and film it this year while I'm there.
Cool.
And that way, I can't tell you what it be. It could be anywhere from 100,000 to 2 or 3 million people watching. Just depends. What day is it?
Saturday.
Saturday morning.
Saturday is good.
Taps off at 9 o'clock.
because we have our Authors Day on Saturday, so it'll be good for a couple of million. So y'all heard it, guys and girls. So if you're not going to be in Atlanta for some reason, I'll probably be broadcasting now so y'all can see it and enjoy it from afar. If you're not there, if you're like living in California or living in Alaska, stuff there.
They do have airfare. I mean, you can fly to Atlanta from California or Anchorage or wherever.
California people, not exactly.
Well,
They're a little strange
whatever.
sometimes. Y'all get on damn airplane, people.
But we make them welcome.
Right.
From all the staff I met there, and I always knew some about staff. That's part of what I do. They were all fabulous people. They were all very nice, and they didn't know me from Bean. They didn't know who I was. I did on the thing I was wearing. I did say press because I was there as press because I got to represent the station. But everybody was just super nice, and even if the thing was flipped over, they didn't know who I was. If I asked a question or how to do this, I was like, shit. It was boom, 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 and I had an excellent time. I really did. It's probably the best kind I've ever been to be honest with you.
Oh, thank you.
It's and I just thoroughly enjoyed it. So, ladies and gentlemen, if I like it, you're gonna like it, people. Because I don't like anything. I'm like Mikey. I don't like anything, man. So y'all should come out and enjoy it. Again, right as the future, you can't just show up. It's not like that, people. I'm sorry. It's not a conference. It's a contest. You have to win to get here, or you have to be like Mr. Pat, this movie, and y'all can get in and come hang out. Or if you know somebody famous, you might be able to get in. I can't help you. People ask me all the time, can you slip this to John? I'm like, no. I said, I can, but it's not going to do any good. I said, even he don't know what's going on, who's going to win. He's like, really? I said, it's numbered. It's blind drawing. That's the first reason I ever came out here, just to make sure it was a blind draw contest, and it is.
The name of the author is left off the manuscripts before we start reading, so we don't know who's
written. A number of people. They don't know the sex, color, age, anything. All they know is you're an author, and that's all they know, or an illustrator, depending on what you do.
The story is all that's judged, and everyone's welcome to put one in.
It should make y'all feel comfortable that you're actually being judged on your work and not who you are. Because I can't say that for everything in our country, but I can say that for that. And Dragon Con, just get out there, enjoy yourself. Y'all might want to start walking a little bit ahead of time so you're in better shape when you get out there.
You're not judged at all at Dragon Con.
No,
just welcome.
No, Dragon Con's a blast. But I would recommend maybe a little pace here and there. I'm sure Pat's gotten used to it over the years. They like to kill me the first year. I was like, damn, up a hill, down a hill, up a hill. It was everybody was just so friendly. Even the staff at the hotel seemed to be very friendly. I didn't see as much of their staff as I seen as yours, but everybody was friendly.
Well, nice. Our people also tip, and so nobody in Atlanta calls in that weekend. They want to be there. We're friendly. We tip. We drink a little bit. It's what it is,
But
we're adults.
We're grown. We're rowdy. We're not destructive.
Yes, mostly.
But you have to enjoy yourself. That's half the reason to be there. Enjoy yourself. Oh, you mean the section where you can go shop, and that is just 2 floors, 3 floors, 4 floors, and it's not just little area floors. We're talking massive area here. I walked around where John and them were for like an hour talking to people, and then I got on the other and walked around for an hour talking. I spent way too much money, by the way.
There are hundreds of dealers.
Everything from costumes, pop art, sewing machines. It's amazing what's available.
Bring a lot of money because I'm telling y'all, people, you're going to see all kind of stuff you want to buy. I had to go back to my hotel because by the time I made the circle, left John, and was walking around, came around, went up a couple hours, came back. I had too much shit in my hands. I had to go back to the hotel. I was like, man, I need a basket. It was a blast. And I got a lot of good stuff. I'm not even, and you know what, people? Usually when you go to these things, you think, oh, the prices are going to be outrageous. So I got 2 lightsabers. One was $100. You can't even find that anywhere. One was $170, and I made a deal with the guy. No, don't get me wrong. They had them out there for $9.99 if you wanted like Kylo Ren's or somebody. But they have sound effects. You don't have to get them with sound effects, but they got them with sound effects. Well, and look, I already see. I'm not a Star Wars fan, but I'm one of the lightsabers. You can carry what you know. I would recommend this though. They have 2 blades for the lightsabers. One's a glass blade. One's what they call a fighting blade. You get the fighting blade because if you hit it on something, it's not going to break. If you hit the other one, it's going to break. It's made out of glass. You can get them all kinds of these people are retards. Get out there, enjoy the conference, have fun. It's a lot of fun. Bring your whole family with you. Bring a bunch of friends with you. Everybody who's within 5 hours driving, I would suggest driving in. I mean, we're talking. What is DC? About 8 hours from there, 9 hours from there. I know it's not a long ways.
About 9.
Yeah, New Orleans is only 6 hours. I mean, come on.
New Orleans is 8.5.
Oh,
not the way I drive.
All right.
I was going to say the way I drive. I usually get there in about 6 hours, but because I do speed a little bit. Shh, I didn't say that online, but go enjoy it and have some fun. You'll see these two guys around from time to time. Don't bother them, but you know.
Oh, no, that's not true.
Oh, good.
Stop us and talk to us if you need something to say. We want to
You
hear
heard
it.
that from them. You did.
Yeah,
So there you go.
my daughters do most of the work now, so
That's even better.
they occasionally will prop me up in front of a camera when I have to talk, or if the hotels need me, which is becoming less and less these days.
So
Yeah,
when the
I'm
fans
glad
do
to
so,
talk.
I'm
Tell-
like that.
Tell me
I'm
what
like
you
myself,
think. What do we need to add? What do you like?
It's a family
That's-
feel. You can
that's
stop
how
and
we-
talk.
That's how we figure out. We listen to you guys. What do we want next year?
Bruce, no, we're going to air this. This will air in full on one of the upcoming shows, no long before the conferences. No, probably within the next week or so, it'll be aired on in the full 2-hour slot that it's in. No, we got to go because unfortunately, I keep these guys around longer, but all three of us have to go get in tux in a few minutes. And, you know, we're late. Emily might hurt us.
No, Emily might hurt us.
Yes,
no joke.
No, Emily Goodwin is very strict about it. So John Goodwin is president of Galaxy Fest. We'll make this real fast. He runs everything really, but he does most of the interviews here. Emily is the one that makes sure the gala goes off.
She makes the trains run on time.
Yes, she does. And let me tell you what, don't get on her bad side because she will whoop up in your head. No, she's a very sweet, very nice woman, but this is intense down here. When once she starts on a gala, because I like him and I like to talk to her, but usually once she starts on a gala, you don't see her till 11, 12 o'clock. She'll leave in the morning early, and you'll catch her maybe having a glass of wine late in the evening, you know, midnight or something. And then she's off to bed and back to work in the morning. And I've been to 5 gala events, and they have all been fabulous. The food's good, the people are nice, and you never know who's going to show up. Like Mr. Pat, you know, you never know who's going to be there.
Mr. Pat.
Well, you know, I'm trying to be nice to these
Hey,
people.
Mr. Actually, in fact, of course, it's online. They can watch it. It streams, and they can catch Pat's speech towards the end of it.
It's just a
giving
little
our Dragon
presentation.
Award to
It's
him.
just 7 or 8 lines. It's
There you go. No, we don't stream. They got somebody else that streams it. But I'll be there doing stuff, so y'all get to see it out that way. It's what was that question? I don't know. You look it up online. You can look it up online. All that information about how much it costs they already told you it's on Labor Day, so just look it up online.
DragonCon.org.
There you go, DragonCon.org. Just look it up. You can purchase it. I purchase your membership right now. Bam, bam, bam. Go get it. And that way you're guaranteed to have what you need to get in.
The price goes up over time,
Yeah.
and we're not at the max price yet, so you can still get a bargain.
And I would buy it for the whole entire event, unless you're not going to be there for the whole event. But I would suggest to get it for the whole event because, frankly, one day you're not even going to break the surface. 2 days you might start getting a scratch in it. 3 days you might get the little digging going.
Oh, you'll get rolling in 3 days.
Yeah, but you'll be all over the place.
And you'll never want to leave.
And that's the problem, guys. When you get in there, it's overwhelming how much stuff to see. I would everything's online, so you can see everything online. You can pace yourself for where you want to be, who's going where, what building has what in it, and you can do it accordingly. And you can really go ahead and say, okay, well, I'm gonna spend a day over here. I'm gonna spend a day over here. I'm gonna spend a day over here.
But the whole intention of how it's structured is not for you to do a lot of things. It's for you to do what you want and make that available to you when you want it.
And we'll be there next year.
And if you don't catch something you really want to see this year, come back next year because our people come back. The people who run the things are volunteers. Gary's been running the Robot Wars I commented on for about 25 years now there. So it'll be there next year if you don't catch it this year. So come enjoy and actually get a night's sleep at least once.
Yeah, well,
That's what Wednesday night's for, isn't it?
Sleep's overwhelming. Sleep's overrated. I mean, who needs sleep? I mean, come on, people.
There you go.
It's I get if I'm lucky 4 hours a night, I'm doing good. 6 is like fabulous for me.
The Saturday night party list had 467 listings for the official parties last year.
It's no, Bobby. Again, it's Labor Day weekend. Look everything you need up on DragCon.com. Check it out.
.org.
.org. I'm sorry. .org. I'll have the correct address.
It'll be fun. You'll find it. We're a pretty big deal, they tell me.
It's last time I just typed in DragonCon.
That'll do it.
That'll come up.
And so y'all get everything you need there, all the information. We get your membership people, but they have maps and stuff, and you can go through a lot of stuff. You can really plan your 5 days there for the 5 days.
We also have an app that'll update a couple of weeks before the show with all the program. You can go. Be plenty of information on our app.
And I would
In fact,
suggest you
we can
use
ask.
it, people. Yeah, I would suggest you use it because one day I just roamed around and I don't know where the hell I was going. I was all over.
But it wasn't a bad day,
Oh no,
was
I
it?
had a blast. Actually, I don't want to make you that sound bad. I ended up one hotel and another. What's going on here? And then when I find out things, and then of course once I get into where everything's going on, I'm just roaming through there. I didn't, Jeannie, there's nothing bad there. It's all great stuff. The hotels are good. There's lots of stuff to see, lots of stuff to do. There's places to eat all over the place in Atlanta, so you don't have to worry about where you're going to eat. Oh,
And it's a very safe environment.
Yes.
Everyone's welcome. Everyone's treated
I
well.
noticed that it didn't seem like I said, first off, I didn't see any disgruntled people walking around, which is strange, especially in the streets. You know, it was one of the 2 days I was there. It was kind of hot, and of course it is Atlanta, so and even September can be warm. But everybody seemed was happy. And, you know, I did see people wore out and exhausted, which is a good thing. But other than that,
Don't blame me for that one.
And a couple people asked me about restaurants. I said, "This is Atlanta. It's like New Orleans restaurants."
Well, one of the hotels just sets a whole lot of food trucks up in there. Yeah, a whole lot of food trucks in their lot.
I stopped and got a sausage dog or something.
Yeah. There's plenty to eat.
So there's lots of things to see, lots of things to do, lots of people to meet. Everybody's really friendly. Don't like an ass because they will kick you out. Other than that, have a good time, enjoy yourself, be safe. I personally recommend this to everyone listening to the show. Whenever you get this archive, go to Atlanta, have some fun. Enjoy Dragon Con for what it is. This man worked hard to get this to where it is today.
Not so much today.
Well, you know, in the beginning, you were trying to get it.
It's a family tradition.
absolutely.
His daughters are running it now.
Yeah,
Well, that's good. So
essentially-
now I know he's got more free time. So I'm gonna track him down while I'm up there this year.
And essentially, it is a family show.
I would have to.
In fact, I just thought of it. It's a woman-run show.
Well, see,
It's
that's
his two
even
daughters
better.
are the chairs.
That's even better. So, and I got daughters and granddaughters. I got lots of them. We're not gonna go there. I might bring someone with me this year. Bobby, I don't know. You can't come with me. She go on your own. But no, guys, we got to get out because we got to go get dressed. I want to thank you. I want to thank both of y'all for coming here.
Thank you.
Hey, thank you. Appreciate you.
And we're gonna get this out so y'all can hear it. People, remember, Dragon Con, get out there, have some fun, enjoy yourself. Submit to writers in the future. If you're a book or if you're a writer or an illustrator, enjoy yourself. Remember, you can submit 4 times a year. I know people are like, oh, one time. I can't know 4 times a year you can submit. You can't really submit the same thing like the gentleman just said, unless you
Improve
it a little bit. Well, real quick, they'll do sometimes they'll give you an honorable mention, or they'll just write back to you and say, hey, why don't you try changing this?
The actual structure is most people get a thank you letter or a response. If you've got something that almost is a finalist, we call them semifinalists. Professional authors, often Jody, this coordinating judge herself, will send you something saying, you know, if you did this, this, and this would be a better story. Send it again with that. And then you have the finalists and runners up, which are here. And then, of course, one winner announced here at the end of the convention. So if you send a story in and it's almost there, you'll know it because you'll actually get a 40-year experienced professional or one of the judges who can be anywhere from 20 to 50 years in the business telling you how to make your story better.
And the winners get published, and the big winner overall, I think it's $5,000 or something. So yeah, this will be your opportunity to be published for the first time.
And the story, story.
And they will continue to help promote you as a winner of the contest.
And actually, Pat just said is so John and Emily travel a lot. They attend a lot of conferences, and they always set up a booth there. And if you're a winner, you're more than welcome. You'll give them a call. They'll make a space for you. You can hang out for a couple hours, sell some books, sign some autographs, have a good time. And guess what? They're going to be at Dragon Con, so you might want to think about that.
Hey, 2 birds with one
That's
stone.
right. So, no, it's a fabulous time. If I had more time, I'd get into it more in depth. But we got to go get dressed. But I want to thank everyone for listening. Who's listening out there? I want to thank both of you gentlemen for having this interview.
Thank you.
And the lunch. And guys and girls, we'll be back to normal broadcasting when I get back in New Orleans. I will actually be in Atlanta Sunday. I got a lecture. I'm going to Atlanta Sunday, but I'll be back in New Orleans Monday. So we'll be back on the regular schedule. And, so Michelle won't kill me or somebody else. Again, like I always say at the end of every show, any moans, groans, gripes, and bitches, please address it to Michelle DeRoche, courtesy of Joe Montaldo. Good evening, everyone. My manager hates when I do that.
Hello, and welcome to the Writers and Illustrators of the Future podcast. This is John Goodman, your host. This podcast is dedicated to the aspiring writer and artist and will provide inspiration and tips from top professionals in the field. If you've been listening to this podcast or are new to it, I thank you very much. I would also appreciate it if you took a moment to follow on whatever platform you use to listen to your podcast. Writers and Illustrators of the Future is one of the longest running writing competitions in the world, now celebrating 4 decades of providing a helping hand as initially conceived by L. Ron Hubbard. I also want to let you know that the Writers of the Future volumes are available in bookstores throughout the US, Canada, the UK, South Africa, and Australia, as well as through all major online retailers. Today's guest is Mark Leslie, a co-founder of the Superstars Writing Seminars, and we are here in Colorado Springs for the 2024 Superstars Conference. Mark has been a guest on this podcast a few times in the past. Mark, by his own admission, is a writer, author coach, speaker, podcaster, publisher, and all-around book nerd. He has been a good friend for probably 2 decades and was a keynote speaker for Writers of the Future when he was an exec at Kobo, one of his several past lives. Welcome, Mark.
John, always great to see you.
Great, thanks. And as has been well established, I'm a serious fan of your Canadian Werewolf series and just finished volume 6.
I'll slip you the $50 later. Thank you.
Sure. Hex and the City. The saga of Michael Andrews and Gail Summers takes on a whole new level of paranormal, and it gets cooler for me because I love paranormal. I love magic, and
Yeah,
it's something that Andre Norton gave my first love for it way back when.
me too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Witch World series, I read it a couple times, and it was such an amazing start to the whole thing. So before we get into the interview, please provide an overview of your career in publishing, because this is so impressive.
Yeah, so I've always loved storytelling. Since the youngest days, I used to tell stories with little Fisher-Price figurines. I later on discovered the magic of doing little stick figure cartoons. And the magic was the story wasn't just in my head anymore. It was something I could put on a piece of paper and somebody else could appreciate it at a later date. As we
Right.
know
Yeah.
of legacy writers whose words are still here to this day. And then I discovered my mom's old Underwood typewriter under a dust cover in the back closet. And I hammered out my very first novel at the age of 13. A horrible novel, but
A novel.
to me, it was an epic fantasy, Dungeons and Dragons style adventure. And I started writing speculative fiction, horror, stuff like that. And I got my first rejection at the age of 15. And I realized it was like this really nasty horror story to CBC Radio, a radio contest for young writers. And they're like NPR in Canada. And I realized if I actually did any market research, I would have realized that no, literary stories work, not horror.
Right.
And so that's just been my life. I went into book selling. I graduated from university in 1992. And my parents knew I always wanted to be a writer. And my mom gave me this advice. I still remember, if you want to be a writer, then you better have a good job. Because that is the reality for most people in the industry. But I was always passionate about writing, and I gravitated towards English literature, which meant I was qualified either to go into teachers college and teach or work in retail. And I chose retail book selling. In 1992, so after hundreds of rejections on short stories, because this was back in the day when there were no self-publishing options. It was
Right.
Get a manuscript, build a name for yourself with short story markets. And I had hundreds of rejections from the age of 15 until I was graduating from university. So in 1992, I graduated university, started working in a bookstore, and that was the year my very first short story, for $5 US and a copy of the magazine in Chapter 1 Digest, a quarterly digest magazine.
From the publishing
Publishing. That was the first publication, and it was a YA humor story. And that was the beginning of my first sale. And of course it went on from there as I continued to sell stories. And then I released my first book in 2004, and it was self-published. And I took a lot of my...
That was from 92 to 2004?
Yeah, and I'd had several dozen stories published, and many more hundred rejections over the years. And I got to a point, I was working in bookstores, and people would say, so you're a bookseller or you're an author? And I would say, yes, I am. And they'd look around the bookstore and say, where can I find your stuff? And I'd say, well, okay, I got a quest for you. It's in a small press magazine published in upstate New York. I was living in Ontario, Canada. And I said, and if you drive down across the border, you're 3 hours south, and you go to Black River, upstate New York, there's a little shop that has it on a rack. I said, oh no, it's February now. It was only on the shelf for January. It's gone now. And I got really frustrated that my work was there, but it was never permanent. So Rob Sawyer, one of the Writers of the Future's judges, Julie Cherneda, Rob Sawyer, Edo Van Belkom, and Nancy Kilpatrick were 4 Canadian author mentors of mine who advised me against self-publishing because no one would ever take you seriously, because that was the going wisdom at the
Back
time.
then it was Vanity Press.
And yet, here's what I love about writers. They still all gave me a blurb because they knew my fiction. They'd either bought my fiction for whatever markets that they were working on, and they knew my stuff, and they still gave me a blurb. So I self-published my first book, One Hand Screaming, a collection of horror stories. I did that in 2004. And ever since then, I have traditional deals with several different publishers, and none of the big 6, but smaller publishers, and also have self-published. And so I've never looked back. I am a storyteller, and I have a good job.
You do indeed have a good job. So you've got going from short story to a novel, because it started as a short story, right?
Yeah, Canadian Werewolf in New York was a 10,000-word story originally written for a market that was, I think it was called The Monster Within, or The Man Behind the Monster. And they wanted stories about like Jekyll and Hyde or whatever, but they wanted the man, not the monster. They wanted to see the man but beneath the beast. The Beast Within, it might have been called. I'm trying to remember now.
Yeah.
I didn't get accepted. I got a rejection for it, but I had been working with some friends, I think at Kobo at the time, in Toronto, Canada's answer to Kindle, and a couple of my colleagues who were from New York. And I said, well, this story's set in New York, and I'd written it shortly after my first visit, and I fell in love with the city. And I said, can you just read it to see how realistic, like, did I get things right about the culture and the people? Because you guys live there. And one of them loved it so much. And she started prompting me for more stories. And then I shared this with Sean Costello, a Canadian horror author, who's a mentor of mine. And he says, a great story. What happens next? And I said, nothing, it's over. The short story ends as he gets to his morning breakfast. And that was the whole goal. And it was meant to be cheeky and funny. He goes, but what happens the rest of his day? And he asked these questions, and he kept hounding me, a wolf reference maybe. and that's when the novel A Canadian Werewolf was born. So I took the 10,000-word story and I said, okay, why did his agent want to meet him? Maybe he needs to be on David Letterman. Okay, that sounds good. And the rest was history. But I turned it into the single day in the life of the man behind the wolf.
Right.
And as you know, it kind of took off from there.
Kind of did, for reals. 6 books later. So now you gone from short story to a novel to a series, which you just alluded to there.
Yeah.
And now you got co-authors happening. So
yeah.
So this is kind of like I mentioned to you beforehand, like, that Yogi Berra quote, when you come to a fork in the road, take it. And I'd like to talk about that, because even though it's maybe a silly quote, it's actually kind of pertinent here, because you've continued to grow this story concept, and it can apply to any story concept. I know that, like, David Hankins has got his short story that got published in volume 39, which is really fun. Death and Taxman.
Yeah, I know, and I have the full length novel adaptation.
You got the novel now, and it's going to continue growing. So, like, how you've taken your short story, made a novel, you have a series, and now you got co-authors as part. From the last thing I read, it's branching. So you got Gail going in one direction, you got Michael. They're still interweaving, but you've got a whole sub-series now going with Gail.
Yeah.
And her story as Michael continues his. So talking about that, how that's evolved, because this is something that's applicable to other authors too, that how, don't restrict yourself on what you can actually do. What's the possibilities?
Yeah, so that was interesting. So Julie is a great writer, a romance writer, friend of mine, great friend, a book nerd like me. We share that in common. And she has edited my work and was familiar with Canadian Werewolf because she's helped me with things. And I went to write the story, which was a backstory to how Gail and Michael and Gail first met and fell in love, because I had readers who liked the tension. Michael was still in love with her, but she didn't want anything to do with him. And they were friends because at least he could have her as a friend, and he took that. And there was that sadness, the Peter Parker loser kind of aspect. Thank you, Stanley. And I tried to write Lover's Moon, and it was initially going to be a short story just for my fans, just to say, here's the story. And I couldn't write Gail. I, like Michael, put Gail up on the highest pedestal. I couldn't reach her, loved her, worshipped the ground she walked on. I couldn't write a proper character because characters have to have flaws. They have to be real. And Gail was too perfect because Gail modeled very much on my partner, Liz. I see her perfections,
Yeah.
And I talked to Julie and I said, you're very familiar with this series. Would you like to write Gail's point of view? So we wrote it as a duet, chapter by chapter, male point of view, female point of view. That was great. Wonderful story. We talked about that one. And then the next book, Hex in the City, was supposed to be me writing what happens next. And I realized it would be more interesting to have Gail's point of view because I liked her point of view. Julie brought something new to Gail, a multidimensionality that I could never have done. I loved her even more with her imperfections. And then I reached out to Julie and I said, would you like to write Gail again? And she goes, but I don't write thriller, urban, paranormal thriller stuff. And I go, well, yeah, but you write humor really well because all of her romance had, and Lover's Moon, romantic comedy, lots of those elements. And I said, I don't think I could ever write Gail the way you did. So I won't be able to write her point of view. I can't. The only way I can do this. And Hex in the City was born. And as we mapped this out and plotted it out, and she learned that she liked writing this action adventure, thriller, humor stuff. That's when we got to the end of Hex in the City, and Gail has to go on a quest separate from Michael. And Julie goes, I love Gail so much. Can I write those novels? And I was honored because I want to know what happens.
Yeah.
And Julie's the one to tell me now. So I think there's a trust, an element of trust, you like a partner, that the right editor, the right writing partner to co-author together, that I can take a character that I love and worship so much and trust Gail and trust that Julie will do right by Gail. And she pulled some things in Hex in the City, and she was worried as we were round robining the book back and forth, like we wrote it in sequence. And she's like waiting for me for this shock thing that happens. She goes, I don't know if you're going to like this. And I put the manuscript down and I just said, Julie, you blew my mind. I think the readers' minds are going to be blown too. This was phenomenal. And she was worried I was going to be upset and ask her to remove it. So I don't know. I think that the way that branches, like you said, from story to novel to collaboration, and then to see Julie take inspiration in a whole new direction is just, it's magic.
Yeah. I mean, that's definitely what it is. But this concept, because we talked about it before on when you come to a fork in the road, take it. And it can be kind of like a very scary proposition. But we talked about the subject of the more you actually learn and become knowledgeable about what you're doing, the more you can know that when you take the fork, you're actually doing the right thing.
Yeah.
And so I think for a storyteller, somebody wants to get into and to take the next level up on writing, what are some of the safeguards to help ensure that you do take the right fork when you take the fork in the road?
Oh yeah, that's a great question. And it's a difficult one because it almost feels like you don't even know if there's a fork there until you start to take it sometimes. Right. And that's when you realize it. And there's a feeling. So if we take, by the way, I was born the same day Yogi Berra, so.
Okay, good. So that's very, perfect, even all the more fitting.
Very apropos. But also, speaking of forks and roads, the road not taken is also, so if we look at that and just wonder, well, what's down that path? I'm a huge fan of Henry David Thoreau and his walking and exploring and going on these epic journeys on foot. And I equate writing to the very same thing because, looking at, Dean Wesley Smith's, writing into the dark or exploratory writing, oftentimes I don't know where this path is going to take me, but I just take it and see what happens. Sometimes, and this is a tough thing for writers, especially new writers, is sometimes I'll go down a path and I'll realize, oh, no, that didn't work. And I have to, murder your darlings. I have to get rid of that because it was a little element. But advice I would give to writers is you learned in that experience. you go back and you try a different path. And that could also be a bonus content for your diehard fans to say, oh, by the way, I cut this chapter because this thing was supposed to happen, but it's like the deleted scenes in a movie. And the fans may want that because it's exciting. Oh, this could have happened. This was the alternate ending or whatever. So not only is that a valuable experience of learning as a writer, and every word you lay on paper is a valuable experience because you're getting better and better as you go. Maybe that content could be leveraged in some other way. I'm a big fan of recycling my own work.
Good. Yeah. So, like I mentioned to you when we were talking about before coming into this, I really didn't see where Hex in the City was going. It was a bit, definitely a surprise. And it's very obvious that there's new stories following it.
Yeah.
It definitely was not an end. You had a good conclusion to that what was happening right there, and your denouement was fine, but then you just had that question at the very end. It goes, oh man,
Yeah.
you can't not,
Yeah.
you've got to read the next book now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So on that then, so when you started your series, did you know it was going to be 8 or 10, or did you have it was going to be a short story, and then someone convinced you to make a novel, and then
Yeah.
you said, okay, I'll do a series, which the magic number is 3, but now 6 into it, 7 has to be done, but because there's 7 and what's happening now, it's going to at least go up to 10. How's that rolled
Yeah.
out for you?
In that exploring the path and wondering where it's going to take me, I thought A Canadian Werewolf in New York was a standalone novel.
Yeah.
It was an editor wanting a short story on a theme, monster road trip that
Yeah.
inspired Stowaway.
Which we're going to get back to.
And then one of the things I've always loved about certain TV series, I'm rewatching Frasier, the original Frasier show.
Uh-huh.
And Niles is in love with Daphne, the physical therapist working with his father, and it's really cool. I love the story of just really the love that doesn't quite connect, and you root for them and want them to be together. And readers had that with Michael and Gail. Michael and Gail get together. We can't have that. We have to throw something at them because it's no fun if they're not challenged. And also, we also set up in Hex in the City a curse that has a dramatic impact that prevents this.
Right.
And they learn a little bit about why some things happened in the past, which was not planned at all. Julie and I, when we were writing Lover's Moon, had some ideas. Oh, this is why. It had nothing to do with the Lover's Moon, but we needed to know the characters better. So we just did a lot of brainstorming. And we created a couple things. So just like the bad guys in Fear and Longing in Los Angeles and Fright Night's Big City, they're still out there. They're going to come back. There are these cursed items that still need to be found. So there's all kinds of adventures that can be had.
And then you have this, we mentioned too, there's one person that, did she die? Did she not die?
Yeah, exactly. And I did that on purpose without knowing. But now it's open because if the body's never found, there's always the possibility that it was a misunderstanding and maybe they weren't dead. So that's I like having the possibility because I don't plan. I love having the possibility of what could happen.
Right. Now, just quickly taking back to this, your Stowaway character.
Mm-hmm.
I love her, and
oh yes,
you haven't brought her back yet. She's such a cute kid. She's smart. She's quirky. She's very independent, and she's very much not with me right now.
I know. And Bridge was a funny character because this has happened to me several times in my career. She was meant to be a prop character, a device. Mm-hmm. There's a wolf predator on a train, and there's a young child followed by a human predator. And the wolf predator is going to save her from the human predator. The minute she opened her mouth and first spoke, she jumped out at me and she created her. She didn't come from me. I don't know where she came from, but and I love that kid so much. And she became a mentor to Michael. And she was such a powerful character that I want her to return, but I want it to be in the right way. I don't want to bring her back just because it's pleases the fan or not. You know what I mean? Just because it meets whatever. I need it to be important because Bridge is such an important character. I mean, she does ask Michael, she gets him to face the reality of his situation with Gale, even though he still can't, he's not strong enough to make it happen. Yeah, Bridge will be coming back, and I'm glad you love her as much as I did, because the kid just grew on me instantly.
Yeah, and the reason I bring this up, because this is you started as a device which kind of like really exploded, and for somebody who's a writer that wants to be, how you evolve and how to develop stuff, this is something that in real time happened that I experienced, and what they need to do, what they should do to take advantage of that, because this is, again, that's when you come to a fork in the road, take it. So you've not taken it yet, but it's definitely in the runway for you.
Yeah.
But that's just how good storytelling can kind of open up these directions of paths that you don't really see coming until they just arrived.
Yeah, like I didn't know. I had the issue of the train's going to get there. He's going to turn into a wolf. How's he going to protect her? And this is the first person he openly admits he's a wolf to. That's a very intimate trust thing.
Mm-hmm.
That's how important she becomes to him that quickly. And that I didn't know that was going to happen. And so it's so, I think it's so fun when as you're creating something, it comes. It's almost like, I think it's important for writers to trust, even if they're scared and they can't see down that path, trust that when they get there, they themselves, some energy of the muse that's part of them, will light that path at the right time and allow them to keep going.
Exactly. And I was just talking with Jim Butcher this afternoon on a separate interview, and we were talking about characterization and, really building people that to a degree are bigger than life. And his stuff is kind of pulpy, and pulp is very much that.
His stuff is amazing.
Yeah. And this follows along that same type of concept.
Yeah.
But it's even more important now, and I'd like you to discuss this too, of like, there's so much divisiveness in society today, and media has gotten so bad, so I just egregious on the subject of the scareheads, and taking something you can have an instant what's not good, but then they take it and they expand it to something really bad,
right,
to be able to get your attention. And so fiction is hard pressed to be able to compete against that unless it is bigger than life or someone other that there's some very much big standout. And so like this girl, Bridge is like, she's like that, Michael's definitely like that. And he's got his shortcomings and he's got his strengths. And but just talking about that too, the importance of characterization, having something that is big, that is going to stand out, because you're trying to compete for a person's attention.
Yeah.
And there's so many demands for the attention just on especially today with all the bad news that's happening globally.
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned Jim Butcher, because I've had readers enjoy a similarity to the Dresden sardonic.
Yeah.
Not quite, but there's that voice. And so there's that wonderful connection there. But the other thing, I think the reason Michael pops for people is when I created him, I wanted to understand how the average person who's not a hero deals with a side effect of having a condition that he cannot control. I grew up with epilepsy. I had epilepsy my whole life, my whole life until I was 14 was when I had my last seizure. But I had instances of understanding what it was like to not have control. And so part of Michael turning into a wolf is he has no idea what happened. And that's sort of, I think people can understand that. They don't have to have had epilepsy, but there are things they have control over and they don't know about and they have no control over. And so I think there's a universality there, but also the way that I have this thing I have to deal with, and that's my cross to bear, and everyone has those in different ways. But also, I think that people recognize is it's not all doom and gloom. It's gonna be funny sometimes. Like I have friends who have, I'm able-bodied, but I have friends who have disabilities in their ability of motion and stuff like that. And they, and it seems like cruel, but they have a lot of fun and enjoy, they make fun of themselves in a way. Like I talk about my baldness and stuff like that, right? It's sort of a fun thing, and it feels more genuine because it's not all one monotone way. I think about funerals, my father's funeral, and we're laughing and telling stories, and it's supposed to be a sad time, and emotions are going everywhere. I was talking on a panel with Jonathan Mayberry earlier today, and we talked about that in horror, that you can't just have a monotone thing attention. You have to go have the ups and downs and the different notes, and it's like this melody. And so I think those are the aspects in a character that are like the people we know and love and are in our worlds. They're nobody is perfect, even though we like to see some people as perfect. But then there's that recognition that, oh yeah, oh yeah, me too, I got that too. I don't know, that's something I enjoy in stories.
Right. So on now I've talked what I'm familiar with is the whole series, the Canadian Werewolf series. That's not the only series you write. So how's it you're able to write and juggle different storylines? How does that work for you?
Well, that's a great question. So I, up until this point, it wasn't until I got to only Monsters in the Building, which is being worked on right now, and another short story request for a collection, that I realized this story has to take place between Canadian Werewolf in New York and Stowaway. I had to do a timeline and a map because it's getting complicated, because I said, oh, is this before this happened or after this happened? So it had to be here. And I didn't have any sort of outline or Bible for the series. So now that I have that, and I did have one of my editors create a mini sort of Bible for me, so I've got that element too. Most of my other realms, most of my other works are not nearly as long and complex. So I haven't yet struggled with bouncing back and forth. And I do bounce back and forth between nonfiction, whether it's true ghost stories or movie trivia or whatever, and fiction. But right now, the fiction I'm loving the most and spending the most time with is Michael and his universe.
Okay. So now you mentioned a Bible. So this is another one of those devices that I've not talked about before with
Right.
On podcasts. So describe what a Bible is and its importance
Right.
To you as an author.
So I think, especially as a series gets longer, there are numerous characters, there's settings, there's things that happen. And it's really a guide for the editor working with the writer or the writer themselves to remember. It could be something as simple as the character's eye color. It could be for me recognizing what street does Gail live on, where's her shop, and I have all these things on little maps. It could be something as middle as, oh no, this doesn't, like, oh yeah, Bridge was the first person he admitted this to. Gail found out, but he didn't know she knew, that kind of thing. And so those elements can get so bogged down in an 80,000 word text. And even as I go to write the newer story, I have to go back and refer to, what chapter did that happen? Like when he talked to so-and-so, what did they say? Or what did they say their wife's name was? Any of those, like, I think of Wikipedia style elements to help you not mess up.
Good. Now, it's interesting. There's this book that Owen Hubbard wrote called Typewriter in the Sky. And it's a parody of that type of a writer who not tracking. So you don't have your Bible, you don't have your things correct in there. So the author's name was Horace Hackett. He's definitely a hack writer, and he's got these things inconsistent with the timeline. He's got, he's got a Steinway piano in the Caribbean before Steinway existed, and these different things he puts in there showing that he didn't have his facts straight.
Right.
And every time he's doing it when he realizes, oh, it's not going right. The next scene, he changes everything, and it's the wrong setting, the wrong stuff like that. And it pokes fun at hack writers,
Right,
who don't have this stuff straight. So, and Mike Resnick, that was his favorite Hubbard story because he called it was like the first recursive science fiction fantasy story. And so while he was able to successfully poke fun of it and make the granddaddy of that subgenre, it points out the need to really have your facts straight. So that brings me now to research and, how does that work with you? Because even though it's just fiction, it's fantasy fiction, just go ahead. But I mean, you've got him in various sits, because he's Canadian Werewolf in New York. You've got, the Central Park, you've got on 7th Avenue and 5th, and you've got, the various studios and stuff like that. So how much did you have to research to make sure you get it right? Because if you don't, you're definitely going to hear about it.
Yeah, it's funny because I do a lot of research for, nonfiction paranormal ghost stories, but I do way more research for the Canadian Werewolf series because in LA, I've been to LA a couple times, once with Writers of the Future.
Right.
I had them stay at the hotel that I was put up in when I came to visit with you people, and it was a wonderful. I loved that. That was my first stay in Los Angeles, and I loved the city so much. And a lot of the things Michael sees in bars he went to, or whatever, are places I went. And when I haven't been there, or haven't been there enough to know the place or know whatever, I do fastidious research. Google Maps, I walk down the street, look to see if there is a corner store there, or if in 2017 there was one there.
Mm-hmm.
Even in one of the novels, I had a scene that took place in a restroom at a diner, and I asked people who lived in New York and went to that diner, is it one of the ones that you go downstairs in? Is it on the main floor? Do you go upstairs? Is it male, female? Are they ambidextrous? I wanted those details as accurate as possible. And that's so critical to me. I can probably fake it. And that's where Julie and I clashed. I'm a pantser, she's a plotter, and yet she would just make things up. And I was like, but they're running for 12 blocks, and it's only a block and a half from this place to this place. And I'm very, very anal about those details because I want someone who has walked down the street or stayed in that hotel, right off Hollywood Boulevard, or who's done this or been in this restaurant. I want them to be able to go, that's where Michael sat.
That's right.
Like the Algonquin Hotel, the cat, all the details, except I had some liberties with it. I made the Barrymore suite a little bit more luxurious than it was, but all the details about the Algonquin Hotel are accurate. And Central Park, when Liz and I go to Central Park, my partner Liz and I wander around, and I've laid down on the ground and said, this is where Michael woke up at the beginning of Stowaway. And she's like, you're weird. And yet she still loves me, so that's good.
That works. So from my experience as a reader, when I have that, it's a lot easier for me to suspend my disbelief on this definite fantastical part, because it's mixed in there with a bunch of real things, with real locations, real
celebrities.
Yeah, all that stuff is there. So when you plug this other thing in there, it's like, huh. And it makes it so that it's easier to accept it rather than going, oh, this is just sorry. And like we've said, I'm doing a podcast week. I'm usually reading a book a week. And so I don't have time to read something that is just kind of like, if it's not worth the author's effort to get it right, it's definitely not worth my effort to bother reading it.
And that's great writing advice right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you don't believe in your book enough to actually do your work on it and do it right, to do your due diligence. And all I can say is with my podcast, because it's grown quite a bit since I'm in year 4 now. But when I remember high-fiving when I broke 500 listens, and now each episode gets at least 2 million listens. But I do so much homework before any podcast I do. I read your book. I've read 6 of the books now.
Yeah.
And so it's easy for me to talk about it and have my opinions. And I'll do the interview because I like it. I'm not going to do an interview if I didn't like it, the series. But it's because there's things, oh yeah, because I've gone to New York a lot. I live in Los Angeles, so
Yeah.
I know what you're talking about. And they're like, wow, okay. So it's easy for me to relate to what's happening there and to be able to accept it. It's obviously it's escapist, but it's fun, and I can like, oh, that's cool. It's grounded for me.
Yeah. It's funny, when I listen to this podcast, I can tell you've done your due diligence. You understand, you're not just, oh, your book has a neat cover. You
Mhm.
get into stuff, you probe, you like very deep research into it, but it creates a unique experience where for a very stimulating conversation, and they always are. But also, as a writer, as an interviewee,
Mhm.
it's so enriching and stimulating to know that you've invested that much in it. And I think that comes off, and that's why the readership grows, because they have something valuable that they're getting from it. And that's wonderful, because I mean, you are the main interviewer and the main host, and that you're in their, in their heart mind
Hmm.
every week, just like you sitting across a coffee shop table with them. And that's a magic, like writing itself.
Yeah. So with yourself, if you and anybody listening to stuff as an author, if you're not going to take the time to really get it right, don't be surprised if nobody follows you.
Yeah.
If you're not going to invest into it, Craig Markell was talking about this afternoon. I did a panel interview as one of the panels for this was a podcast panel,
Yeah.
and he talked about he put up one of his books as an AI audio book, and he had 3 of them, 3 stories,
Yeah.
and hasn't sold a book yet.
Yeah.
Hasn't sold one. Nobody's bought it, and so if you're not going to care enough to put some honest to goodness effort and concern and care and wanting to do it right,
Yeah.
don't be surprised when it goes nowhere. It falls flat.
Yeah. I mean, what's that saying that you get out of it what you put into it?
Uh-huh.
That seems to be so true.
It is definitely true. So you do a lot of seminars and you do a lot of workshops. So what are some of the things you normally get asked? That's a frequent question to yourself.
A common question is people not understanding, should I go with, how do I get an agent, or should I go with a publisher? Or I hear that self-publishing is this or that. And often writers mistakenly believe that they have to only do one, and they forget the fact that they have the power and ability to license their IP, their beautiful creative IP, the way they want, and they can do both. I love working with publishers. I love self-publishing. I love the perks and challenges of both. I mean, well, the challenges I don't love as much as the perks, but the challenges also help me learn and grow as a person and writer. And I think the other thing writers often happens with beginning writers that I like to remind them of is, it's okay. You're going to make mistakes. I've made tons of mistakes, and I'm hopefully going to learn from them. And it doesn't mean I can't, well, try again
Mm-hmm.
and keep at it. Like those rejections I always got. I'm going to write things that people aren't going to read, even if I invested in it and even if I did my research. But the way I look at it is that, to me, that magic I talked about earlier of putting something on paper and somebody else being able to appreciate it when I'm not there, at another place and time, transcends space and time. And it fundamentally does one of the most powerful things we have as humans, is connecting people and making somebody feel seen or heard,
Mm-hmm.
felt, and connected. And so if that story you wrote doesn't fly off the shelves and become a New York Times bestseller, like several of the other guests you mentioned talking to today, maybe a handful of people or one person read it and it made a difference. When we were having dinner with Kevin Anderson and Rebecca Mesta, Kevin relayed a story of a reader whose life was fundamentally changed and saved
Yeah.
because of a series of books that he co-authored with a dear friend of his. That is so beautiful.
And I think it's also important for, like, again, for a writer to understand that if you think you're going to write something that's going to have a broad mass appeal, that is, like, Stephen King has a pretty good appeal. I'm not one of,
Right.
I'm not really that big on that type of horror.
Yeah.
You know, I enjoy your storyline. I don't view it particularly as horror.
Yeah.
That one there is
Just because there's a werewolf doesn't mean it's horror.
right.
Yeah.
It's like, it's almost like comedic urban fantasy for me because
Yeah.
of, we'll get into this part here now, on the lyrics that are always popping up throughout your stories.
Yes.
But I think you got to also realize that who you're writing for, who's your audience, and realize that audience is, if you want a huge cross section, you're going to have to write something that appeals to that, but also you have a lot more competition. But if you really dig, writing the werewolf in the Appalachians, then you're going to have an audience for that. It's not going to be as big as
Right.
Other type of subgenres. So when you went after this series of the Canadian Werewolf, what was the audience, or what were you trying to reach there?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, because I don't know if I knew it
Mhm.
consciously, but I do know that I know it's not for everyone. I know there are people not going to enjoy the story. And I made the mistake when I wrote the story of not even recognizing it was urban fantasy. So the first cover I had on A Canadian Werewolf in New York, it was more literary, because I thought, well, you never see him as a wolf. It's just a human, and it's really navel gazing, and that's very literary. So nobody who reads urban fantasy is going to want this, but nobody who reads literary fiction is going to want this either, I realized. And it wasn't until 4 years, it came out in 2016. It took me over 10 years to get it written from that first short story. And I didn't sell all that many. And it wasn't until I started writing Stowaway that I realized there was a series, and I had a professional artist give me that brand. And I embraced urban fantasy because I realized that it is urban fantasy.
Mhm.
It's just lighter
Yeah.
than, because magic is not as pervasive in this world. It's very subtle and very similar to horror, in that, though, in a horror novel, it's usually not set in a
Until you get to volume 6,
fantastical.
but okay, go ahead.
Yeah, but until, well, but even then, the average person doesn't realize this is going on. Like, you and
Yeah.
I are walking down the street, come from a restaurant. We didn't see the demons fighting in the alleyway beside us.
Right.
And so, yeah, the whole world doesn't. It gets a little scary, but the world is scary.
Yeah.
And so that's the thing, and the world is very subtle. And I was very careful about that with Julie, because she was having stuff happen in the middle of and I was like, no, people can't. If people see it, I need this to be this world, with a little bit of magic here and there, just like we have. As we're like, did I see something there or not? Because we question ourselves of our
Mhm.
own reality. So, anyways, but those are some of the elements that I think happened to me. And I don't think, when I think of my audience, I'll go back to Stephen King for a second. His audience, constant reader, is Tabitha King. He's not shooting for millions of people. He's shooting to please one reader, and he's thinking of her. And I have a best friend. Steve's been my best friend my entire life. And Steve's always liked the humor in my writing. He's never enjoyed any of the darker things I've written, the
Right.
horror and stuff. And maybe I'm thinking, like, Steve would have fun with this tale. And maybe that and here's the funny thing: Steve's terrified of werewolves. And even though it's not the half man, half wolf that he's terrified of and has nightmares of, he refuses to even pick them up, even though he probably is the person who inspired me to write them. And they're not what he thinks they are, but he's too scared. I think that's so ironic that,
Yeah.
the person I'm maybe thinking of writing it for is never going to read them.
Yeah. All right. So now the part that I was looking forward to addressing on this last 15 minutes here now. So there's been 3 authors who I've interviewed who have this penchant for including the lyrics of a specific group, Rush, in the books, you and Craig Martell and Kevin Anderson. There's no doubt more, but these are three that I've talked to, and it just
Yeah.
really struck me as like, wow. So, and then you take it to a whole new level on using lyrics and puns off of lyrics, Hex in the City, come on,
Yeah.
you know. So is that part of your, I don't want to use the word shtick because I don't want to like downplay it,
Yeah.
but it's a definite characteristic of
Yeah.
yourself as an author. You use lyrics a lot, and specifically you go after Rush. So spill it.
Well, if I was shooting for a large audience, I probably would have picked the Rolling Stones or some Beatles or something, right? But I picked a band that I'm very passionately, intimately in love with, and I am a lyric fan in general. And Rush is, I got into the music because of Neil's lyrics, and I think I'm thinking of people like me. I remember reading Kevin J. Anderson's first novel, and I did not know Kevin back then, and I went, that's a reference to something from Grace Under Pressure. That's a reference to something from this other song. This is a reference to this third track on Moving Pictures. And I thought that was so cool that I picked up on it. And I thought, he's doing that for people like me. And I like that. I like those Easter eggs. So that was fun. And I have made it, with the exception in the shorter pieces like the novellas, or the romance one I wrote with Julie, because that was just a different feel. It was meant to be a sort of separate piece from the stories. My chapters have to have cheeky, tongue-in-cheek titles, and often they're play on lyrics, like when you get caught between the moon and New York City. That's not a Rush lyric, but I definitely have fun with those. And again, if a Rush fan picks it up, oh, they're in for a treat. And they may not, and it's going to come as a surprise, because nowhere on the cover does it say, Rush fans, you're going to love this.
Yeah. What's funny too is Craig Martell uses, I don't know if you've read any of his books or not yet, but he used them in the first book I read of his, The Operator, in the series, and he loves Rush. He's always playing it.
Yeah.
And the girl he falls for doesn't like Rush.
Yeah.
Just has her own opinion about that band there, that Canadian band, and
Yeah.
he's just like, he's got to have. And she finally starts coming around, and okay, we'll play this as our song. But have you found that there's like, that's a universally accepted band in lyrics, or is it something that's like very niche, to
Yeah. It's a great question. I think it's probably a lot. I mean, they are gigantic when you think of the fan base, but based on the overall fan base of music, probably not. They've never wanted to be that popular band. So fans like Craig and Kevin and I, when we find one another, it's 10 times more powerful than, yeah, I like the Beatles. Right?
Yeah.
And that maybe makes us even more passionate to want to just put another Rush Easter egg in there.
So, okay, that makes sense. I can think with that. So now when you write and you write in these lyrics in there, it's like, do you work backwards from the lyrics, or do you're writing along and then the lyric, you just all of a sudden the lyric pops in your head and you plug it in?
That's how it happens. It pops up just like in normal conversation, where word association suddenly leads me into, and I know there's someone in your life that does that the lyrics come out all the time in the middle of conversation, and you look at this person and go, wait, what? And I love people like that. I that's the way I think.
Mhm.
And therefore when I write, it happens. I don't necessarily plan it. And it's so fun when it happens. That's just a really special time.
Yeah, and then so when you think of these lyrics, is the music happening with in your head, or is it the whole thing there, and you're just what you're putting down there, and it's totally fine if the reader goes in their head that they got Neil's drums happening or whatever?
Well, sometimes I end up getting the earworm in my head, and I end up stopping writing and appreciate my memory of the song. That does happen. But I will often hear the rest of it and then have to tell myself to stop because I have work to do. And I'm having too much fun. Okay, too much fun. Let's go. Let's get back to work here.
So based upon book reviews, fan reviews, letters, mail, has that been like something that as a standout for you that makes you like different authors have different
Yeah.
qualities. They're like, oh yeah, I like his blah.
Yeah.
Is that something that you find responsive from your fans?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's not called out by a lot of people. A lot of people just talk about the story and the characters, but there are comments from readers who recognize what I'm doing with the chapter titles. And I like that can be an element of my branding that and that's because it's part of Michael in the branding and the cheekiness and the wry humor and stuff like that. Not all my books have that.
Mm-hmm.
That's an element of who the main narrator is, because he kind of commands that voice. In Lover's Moon, where it was pure duet narration, we didn't have chapter titles. It was just 1, 2, 3. Julie and I struggled with Hex in the City because she struggled with those chapter titles. And she said, "Okay, you write the titles for Gail's chapters because I can't do this. This is not me." I'm like, "Okay." And so that's why when we were thinking about Gail's chapters, maybe don't have those, and Michael's will.
Mm-hmm.
But that I wanted. Gail has elements of her that are very eccentric and different.
Oh,
and
for sure. I mean,
and I wanted Gail's voice because the chapter, it was also a nod to old fiction where there's almost a summary at the beginning of this chapter that tells you what's going to happen. And sometimes I'm doing that. And I'll sometimes reference lyrics.
you call it old. These days it's called metadata.
Yeah, metadata. Yeah. But when you think about like that, I remember that is like, and the chapter in which Mr. Hetherington sits down finally with his grief, and
Yeah.
there's this like sub chapter that actually helps me when I'm just looking at the outline. I'm like, oh, it must be chapter 22 because of what I wrote there. It's a clue for me. It's like a sticky note.
That's good. So now so I'm looking for it because obviously this is, Writers of the Future, and it's I'm trying to give people different ideas of what they can do and what they can use to help them on their career and on their way. And you've got these things with this that you obviously use with the Canadian Werewolf series.
Yeah.
Using these Easter eggs that you're talking about.
Yeah.
But using lyrics and songs and just clever tongue-in-cheek, reference and innuendo. Is that like that's you? That's like this is my style. Is this like your voice, or how does that fit in there like that?
It is probably the closest to my narrative fiction voice than anything else. I have an author voice for helping authors, which is different, but also has humor in it. And that's just part of it. But this definitely is, I think, yes, it's Michael, but it's also me heavily influencing that voice.
I'm just curious. We've talked about before, but just in terms of other authors, and obviously this is the Writers of the Future and the competition, and we're out year 40 now. Is there anything you can talk about, because you were a keynote speaker, a couple of decades ago or so, on the impact that L. Ron Hubbard's had on the genre of science fiction and fantasy through Writers of the Future?
Yeah, so I mean, the impact and the inspiration is just incredible. It's immeasurable. You can measure 40 years, but you can't measure the impact that this contest has had on aspiring writers and in inspiring writers, to do a little tongue twisty there. But I think one of the things when I think about L. Ron Hubbard, I think about a writer who was way ahead of his time, a Renaissance man. He was so many things, all the different, like ship's captain and all, like, just never mind. But when you look at his fiction, he embraced pretty much every genre. He wrote on a typewriter, way harder than dictation or the tools we have today. In the pulp fiction, and this was how he made money to fund his adventurous things that he did, and the exploring and all of that. And I look at today and we think about the future, and I was asked to speak about the future of publishing, was that 10, 12 years ago or something? And I think that L. Ron Hubbard is a writer from that pulp fiction era who made a dramatic difference in the industry, but he's also, there's an element of